have two kids, so that's probably like a really good segue to kind of like
Yeah.
jump into it, because
Sure.
I know that you're the founder of Globowl, and that's
Yes.
a really cool company that makes baby foods and kids foods that are
Yeah.
internationally inspired cuisines and all sorts of different health benefits and other types of benefits. And I wanted to get into all that because I have a lot of
Yeah.
questions,
Of course.
especially having two kids that have both been like pretty picky eaters, and like that was
Yeah.
a challenge for us. So I have a lot of questions on that, but I
Yeah.
actually want to back up a little bit in your
Okay.
story and sort of one chapter or two chapters before that,
Okay.
because I know you've founded some other companies
Yeah.
here in Chicago, and you've had quite the journey. So I want to hear a little bit about your road to entrepreneurship. I'm guessing it probably started pretty early for you, where you knew
Yeah.
you had some desire to go build something of your own. So tell me a little
Yes.
bit about that.
Uh, Thank you. Yeah. Thank you for asking and allowing me to share the story.
Yeah.
Yeah, I kind of coined the term accidental entrepreneur for myself because it was not really the intention at all. I started in college with a journalism background, ended up switching out of journalism to theater. I minored in Italian. Like, what does one do with that? Great question. My parents were also questioning what one does with that.
Mm-hmm.
So I kind of pursued a couple of those things for just a couple of years. And then by 23, 24 years old, I saw sort of a void in the market here in Chicago for people like me at that stage of my life. As a young, cosmopolitan woman, what do I want to do? Where do I want to go? What do I want to see? And there was nothing that really spoke to me. And so I created, this the very first digital only publication for the city of Chicago. There was no paper component. And I mean, it was crazy. It was back in the day when investors would ask, wait, you're not going to have a paper part? Like, you're not going to have an actual magazine? I'm like, no, that's the past. We're moving towards the future. So ran that for about 8 years. It became the number one online resource for women in the city of Chicago. And it evolved, when I started it at 23, 24, and by the time I closed up shop, to pursue another opportunity, that woman has evolved, right? They may have bought their first home or gotten married or had a child. And so it's funny where I am today. It's like I've been on that same course with that same woman for so many years.
Yeah.
So I guess I just keep following my own path of what like I need. And then I realized, okay, so many other people need it. So anyway, so I did that for a while. That was my first foray into entrepreneurship. And then the second company, I was one of the first employees. So I was a founding employee. I launched the Chicago market for a startup called Reserve Restaurant Technology System. And that actually sold to Resi. Resi sold to American Express. So that was an interesting experience in the sense that it was a much bigger operation in terms of venture. It was a venture-backed company, major venture partners like Google, and the co-founder of Uber was an investor, things like that. So there was a different kind of pressure doing a startup like that versus doing my own. But definitely felt ownership over it, like was able to get the Chicago office going, signed up all the restaurants. Like it was an amazing experience. I know it didn't become the Uber for restaurants, but it was very much run in that same way. So it was cool to be a part of something that felt, like it could go in that direction. And then this is my third company. So I in the meantime, between Reserve and here, I had a couple kids, and I was consulting for a ton of startups. They just kind of came out of the woodwork during my maternity leave. And I'm like, that's what I should be doing, is supporting these other startups, allowing me to be home with my son. One of the companies that I was working with ended up becoming a full-time job for a little bit. And I was the global director of sales for a hospitality consulting company. But then COVID hit, and you know what happened to the hospitality industry at that point. And then that was about the same time I was starting to feed my second child solids, and where the idea came from for Globowl. So here we are.
So leading up to that sort of light bulb moment, or maybe it was like over a period of time where it sort of led you to go create a solution, to a problem. Looking back real quick again at some of the startups you're involved in and some of the companies, what would you say at that time was like the biggest learning or the biggest takeaway? Obviously the first company, and I look at everything through like a marketing lens, and that's my background. And I'm guessing some of those companies, if you're building, like you said, for an audience that, I mean, a lot of times you kind of build something for yourself and then you find out, hey, there's a bunch of other people who are just like that. So you kind of already like know the audience really well. So just like through that lens a little bit, like what were some of the things that you learned and took away that you thought like really set you up for some success, or at least, maybe a slightly less rougher road down the line?
Yeah. Well, I will say one of the hardest parts about this one is that I've never done a product company. Creating an actual thing from nothing, like a physical thing, is like crazy. And the learning curve is steep. But the experience that I had in business before still stands, right? I mean, the business fundamentals are the same. Costs are different. You now have some, COGS and cost of goods, like things like that. There are definitely going to be added expenses and things that you don't need, but ultimately running a company is fundamentally the same. So having the experience on both the kind of I did raise a little bit of money for the first company, but it was mostly bootstrapped. Then a venture-backed business kind of gave me the experience on all sides of the spectrum, both sides of the spectrum. And now I'm somewhere sort of in between with how it was built and how it's growing. We did raise money. It's not good. About $1 million. I mean, it's not nothing. But we're in a very, what's the word? It's a hard economy right now, to raise money. So it's like, okay, you gotta get what you can, use it for what you can. You got to quickly make your own revenues, right? So anyway, so I think the background that I have in business is, of course, just helpful in running something new and running it by myself at the beginning. I now have an employee, thank God. She is a gift. Her name's Joanna, and she's our head of operations. And I realized I needed to fill in the holes of where I wasn't, I didn't have the time. You really can't do absolutely everything. I've had to accept that about myself. But also she lives for the operational part of things. She loves logistics, and it allows me to focus on what I do better and what I should be doing as the CEO. So this was definitely kind of a little bit of a new path, obviously, but basing it on 20 years-ish now of experience, and hopefully not making the same mistakes twice. I'll make new ones for sure. I already have, but I'm not going to make the same ones I made, in round 1 and 2 and 2.5. Yeah. And I want to get back to kind of the origin story of Globowl, but the one question before that is going into starting this new chapter, new company, product, learning a lot, figuring out a lot, like probably as you're doing it. What were the kind of things that you had learned up to that point about, here's the stuff that I love to do when I'm like running a company or consulting or, running a business, and here's stuff I can't stand and I'm kind of curious where like the sales and marketing part of that fits. Is it somewhere in the middle? Is it one side or the other? Or some people like all of the crazy, I mean, it's kind of crazy, right? Running a company, you're learning everything as you go. It is crazy. Yes.
So what was the kind of stuff that you really loved doing that kept you hungry and excited?
This company got me excited from the beginning because it incorporated everything I ever loved in life, right? It's like my family, like culture, how food always brought us together as a family, like the ability to teach kids about the world through food, travel. Like, so inherently, I was just so happy about what the brand stood for, or stands for, and being able to do something that incorporates all my loves, brings my family into the mix. But from a business perspective, like I really enjoy the branding part, and the marketing. I will say, like, I'm not a performance marketer. I'm not a social marketer. I mean, just kind of spreading the word in a more general sense. I like the marketing component. But really the branding, the flavors, the more of the creative stuff is definitely where I thrive. And I'm very proud of the brand. I think the brand is super cohesive. I think it's understandable, from the moment you see it. But, the financials and the operations stuff, I don't love, but I do it. I work with a fractional CFO as well. So like I've been able to fill in those voids that, one, I either don't like, or I'm not good at, or both. So at this time around, I think I've been smart enough to sort of bring in people that are better than I am at certain aspects of the business, which I hadn't, really done in the past. And so that's been really helpful, along with compiling, a board, an advisory board of people that have actually done businesses like this, having not done CPG before and not knowing what I didn't know, right? You have no idea, like, oh, where do I buy glass from? Oh, there's different kinds of, caps that fit different kinds of jars. That's crazy. Like, it's just, the supply chain, especially during a global pandemic and, everything happening with tariffs, like, the supply chain is real. I've never dealt with a supply chain before. So there's definitely been learning curves, but I've been trying to piece together the right team to help support that stuff so that we don't get behind or we don't have something massive, disrupting our flow. So I have, fractional CFO, great advisory board. I have that head of operations I mentioned, so really kind of rounding out the team in a way that makes us proficient at all sides of the business.
That's great. And I actually have more questions on that, but I want to circle back real quick to the kind of the origin story. Cause I think it's so interesting to me when people start businesses, any kind of business, but especially a physical product, a CPG company. If you're like a solo, founder, or even a small team, it's like, sometimes you're like, how in the world did anybody ever get that started? And it always starts with like an idea, and people have a million ideas for companies, but like getting it from an idea to an actual product, that's almost impossible. And then getting it from a product to a successful business. So take me back to, and I don't know about what year this was, but you had, I think it was your first child was like a pretty picky eater, right? And then that kicked off sort of a lot of, the story for you, right?
Yeah. So exactly. It's so crazy when I think back on it. When we had our first kid, my husband and I are both food professionals, right? I mean, he spent his entire career in Michelin-starred restaurants. I've been a food writer on top of everything else I've been doing. So it's like, how are we okay with just giving him like mushed up nothing? Like and it's funny, my pediatrician, who's also a lifelong friend, she said, feed them anything, literally, except the, couple things we know as parents, they can't have honey and they, certain things they can't have. But other than that, feed them everything. There's nothing to be afraid of, right? I mean, they can handle it. And I just didn't, because you're afraid. I don't know why. And so he just became the pickiest eater. And quite frankly, it's painful to watch it, knowing how much joy food brings us, like watching our kid, eat the same meal for breakfast, lunch, and dinner every day for years is like, so then with our daughter, we just said, we're not going that route again. I'm convinced it's why he's the eater that he is. And so we just gave her what we were eating as her first meal. And it was coconut shrimp curry. I mean, it had all the allergens, all the flavor, right? She loved it. If you really think about it, why wouldn't she? It's flavor. It tastes good. We all like it, right? And, I will say when they're that little though, their taste buds are even more enhanced, than ours. They do dull down over time. But so that's a powerful flavor. And yet she loved it. And so I just wouldn't, as a parent now, knowing that their taste buds are so sensitive, we don't add extra salt, we don't add sugar, but like the flavor stuff, there's no reason not to. And they embrace flavor between the ages of, there's differing views on it, but let's say between the ages of 4 to 6 months to 18 months. And that is when we can most easily influence the way these kids eat forever. It's like getting all of that stuff in there during that, that impressionable time. And so we did that. And honestly, the same week that we gave her coconut curry, she ate a pesto pasta that I made. She ate saffron because I made a saffron sauce. Like, she loved it all. And she still eats, almost everything. She's a normal kid. Like, she might not like some certain things, but that's not because we didn't give it to her. It's because she actually tried it multiple times and just doesn't like that flavor, right? Like, make someone like something they don't like. But in reality, she tries everything and she enjoys most food. And it's a beautiful thing to see. And actually, it's helped inspire my son to be a little bit more, he's more willing to try these days. He may not like it, but he'll put his tongue on it. Maybe if he likes that, he'll chew a little bit. It's crazy, but these are big steps. I think he's being inspired by his family around him, and also like kids at school and kids at camp. And, there's a lot of kids that do eat well, parents that have, that might come from a different cultural background and feed them the food that they've grown up eating. Like they eat pretty well. And so I think my kid is inspired by the people around him now. So I'm glad he's being more open-minded when it comes to that.
Yeah, and you mentioned kind of the cultural aspect. I think I heard you giving a different interview, and you talked about and I didn't really realize this, but like around the world, that this idea that we have maybe in the US or Western culture of like the idea of like a specific baby food that like is so dulled down to it's just like mushy one ingredient that just the idea of that doesn't really exist, or it's not popular around the world. And then I don't know if it's too big of a leap to make, to connect that to, I mean, the way that just so many people in the US are just so unhealthy, and the foods that we eat going into later kid years and adulthood, it's just, it has to be kind of connected on some level. So was that like a light bulb moment that, like, while you were, hearing from your pediatrician and exploring and giving foods for, your kids to try, was that something that you were kind of discovering at the same time that maybe kicked off the idea of that, like, oh, maybe there's an idea here to get it to be a little bit closer to like, hey, there might be like a business idea here.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I had like a natural instinct to think like, okay, I'm going to go look and see if parents in other countries or Greece or Europe or wherever, Asia, are they going to the store and buying pouches full of like prunes or potato? No, they're not. They are feeding their kids the way that they eat. And these kids all over the world, I mean, it's statistics, and there's journals and there's articles and there's studies, that kids grow up eating what the parents eat, and they never really think twice about it, and they're not picky eaters, and they don't have food allergies. I'm not saying never, right? Of course, there's going to be people with food allergies, but in general, we are 10 times more likely to have food allergies here in the United States. It's Western. It's not just the US, but it's mind-boggling, and it's because we've sanitized baby food down, not only to like flavorless, but we've also taken out these things that actually keep our kids healthy. There's no reason why a kid shouldn't have eggs at the beginning, unless, of course, they're exhibiting certain signs. Kids that have eczema and things like that, definitely talk to your pediatrician. I'm not a doctor, and I make that very clear. But if you introduce them to allergens early, it is scientifically proven to reduce the likelihood of future food allergies. And so we didn't add allergens into our food per se. We just didn't take them out of the recipes that they come from. Pad Thai inherently has, soy in it. It inherently has peanuts in it. Same with all of our meals. It's whether it's dairy or wheat or sesame, whatever it might be. And so kept them in. That's it. It's like, it's just not that hard. We don't have to sanitize the food. So yes, in doing a lot of research and seeing kind of the way American kids eat versus the way kids eat around the world, it's a stark difference. And it's astonishing, quite frankly. And one of the other reasons too that I wanted to start this, I didn't know I wanted to start this, by the way. I was very much inspired by my kids, COVID, and the idea of not being able to see the world, and how do we bring, this to kids. But also, like, there were no options that I would personally buy at the store. And not just because of the flavors, the mush, that's the other thing. Kids shouldn't be drinking food. They need to be chewing their food. That's how they learn oral motor skills. And we also have a higher prominence of like texture versions here in the United States, because we are drinking food out of pouches. Like, you shouldn't be sucking down all of the food that you eat. So anyway, there's just nothing out there that I was willing to buy for my kids. Even though, some of them are healthy, right? Like, it's a fruit pouch or whatever. It's like, how much natural sugar is in that pouch because of how many pieces of fruit go into it, right? Like, none of this is the natural way in which children should be eating. And it's not the way that they used to eat. It's a new problem. So that was also an impetus, was like, maybe it was subconscious, but it was also like, there's nothing out there I'm willing to feed my kid. And in today's day and age too, why are we serving pouches in, like, plastic pouches to children. I mean, I know the micro and nanoplastic thing is more new than, say, the environmental impact of plastic pouches, but it's all there and it's all been there, and there's got to be a better option. And there is. It's glass, or there's other vehicles for it, but yeah. And so we decided to take the approach of glass, because to us, even though it's more expensive and it does cut into our margins and it is impactful to the business, it's still the right move, and it's still the right thing for kids, and the parents that recognize that are willing to pay for that. So anyway, I'm very passionate about the whole plastic thing as well. I just think it's kind of crazy that there's other options out there that people don't take advantage of.
Yeah. So you kind of looked out into the market to see, are there solutions to this problem, at least the way that you were looking for you and your family. Didn't really see much. At what, and like behind the scenes, I think you were, creating different foods and exploring what worked and what didn't, and probably talking to other parents and,
tons.
And just learning about the entire sort of baby food ecosystem. At what point did you, because you said you weren't, it's not like you were looking to start a CPG company by any means.
Quite the opposite.
At what point did you kind of look at the opportunity and go, okay, there's something here, we're going to go pursue it, and then here's the first step? Like what was the first step?
Oh my God, it feels like forever ago. It wasn't that long ago, but I'm trying to remember.
And this was before, like right before COVID, or?
It was in the midst of quarantine. So like literally we couldn't leave the house. So that was such a big, that was more inspirational to me. It's like, okay, like my kids can't think that this is all that there is, right? Like, and my mom and dad taught me about our cultures, like our heritage, our religions, our this, that, through the foods that we eat. And so I'm like, this is such an excellent way for my kids to still know that there's life outside of these kind of four walls. And also, when kids are exposed to diversity early, like they grow up to be more open-minded thinkers. And it's just, that's just, how it is. So, and I am trying to counteract any of that, that exists with the way I'm raising my kids and the way that I'm providing a product that hopefully helps others do the same by introducing culture and diversity from the very beginning. So going back to your question, which now I'm remembering was, what was that first step? So it wasn't that long, quite frankly. As soon as this idea hit, I'm like, oh my God, no, I don't want to do that. But I have to, And so I swear it was like that night or the next day, I just started doing more of the nitty gritty sort of research, I found that LEAP study, which is the first study that, showed about peanut exposure and tons of stuff. Right. And then the USDA had just come out maybe the year before with their first ever pediatric feeding guidelines, which said feed allergenic foods early and often. Diet diversity is critical. I'm like, okay, this is all new science. This is what we are learning. So like, let's get on this. And so I knew right away, and I sent out a survey to pretty much every mom I know. I mean, I would say there was at least 100 or so people on that initial survey on what feeding practices were important. Would you feed your child this? Like, how, on a scale of 1 to 5, are you afraid of salt? Are you afraid of this? Like, just trying to understand the way parents, feel about that first feeding journey, and got a lot of information that I needed. Which part of what I wanted to do would resonate the most? Like, was it the allergen introduction? Was it the flavor introduction? Was it the mission behind it of introducing kids to culture? Like, what is it that really resonates? And you don't think about these things, but it's like, well, that's the branding that you have. That's the direction you have to go in. If the single biggest thing that resonates is the flavor, then that's what you have to put in the forefront, right? If the biggest thing is the allergens, blah, blah, blah. So, did a lot of that. And I swear I must have set up the business, as a corporation within that week. I was like, I'm moving full steam ahead on this. What's wrong with me? Like, oh, my poor husband. I am like, I'm just like, I think I'm going to do this. And he's so supportive, and he loves the idea of it. He believes in it deeply. We do, together. And we went all in, we really did. We put pretty much everything into this. And here we are. It's been, we've been selling for about 1.5 years in store, but working on it for about 3 to 3.5 years, something like that. So it takes
Gotcha.
a long time to build a product, by the way. You have to source all this stuff. You have to find a chef.
Yeah.
Oh, you were asking too, kind of like those like details, like the logistics of it. It's like, oh, okay, I can make curry or I can make masala in my kitchen. That doesn't mean it's going to stay good in a little jar, right? Like,
Yeah.
oh, I need a chef that can do this. Then you have to find a chef that's willing to work with someone in such a small stage and who has the experience and knowledge and food science stuff. I mean, like, it's crazy how much goes into this. And because we're dealing with babies, the most little and vulnerable amongst us, like there is no stone unturned. Like everything is done with the highest of standards when it comes to safety, obviously, health, nutrition. And so, testing over and over, so there's a lot of those things that you don't even realize in advance that you have to do. And then you're also dealing with governing bodies and nutritional labels and like all these complicated things. So it's a doozy, as my kids would say.
Yeah. And you mentioned you've been selling in stores for like 1.5 years. But prior to that though, were you like, where were you selling it? How were you like the first time you had to kind of like start connecting with like moms and parents and saying, hey, there's this product, here's, like you said, how do you talk, like the brand, how do you talk about it? What are the thing that you lead with? Where was that first place that you were selling it and like having those conversations?
I mean, I think the very first thing I did after, the legal stuff of incorporating and that, was start to work on the brand itself. What are we going to call this? What's it going to look like? What's the messaging? Probably simultaneously, like on a parallel path with like finding a chef developer. And experimenting with recipes in my own kitchen. Like, okay, and I did more surveys at that point too. Like, okay, I have these 15 flavor options, which are the top 5 that you would want to see us launch with, things like that. But yeah, I think the branding part really came first and really securing what it is that we wanted to say. And then in terms of where did we sell first? I mean, it takes a very long time to get a product off the ground. I would say it took almost that whole time, 1.5 years or so, maybe more, 2 years. I might be like a little off with some of those, but I would say it was at least 2 years of development. But during that time, I did do a lot of the cooking myself. Like once we were able to nail a recipe and know how to can it, basically, it's a canning type of process to keep it shelf stable. We were able to use one of my dear friends, a Michelin star chef here in the city. I used her restaurant and we went and we cooked it and canned it and did all that. I don't consider that selling because it was very much more about product market fit. It's like, we're going to cook all this and we're going to go to the market. We're going to cook all this and we're going to do this street festival, this family friendly street festival this weekend. And that was kind of how we started talking to customers that weren't people I knew, like these are strangers at the street festival, whatever. And that's when we realized that this is actually something people want. I can't even tell you how many, I remember that street festival like it was yesterday, that first one where grandparents were with their, with their new babies were like, oh, I wish I had this for my baby here, who's the parents, right? Of the, and they were just all so enamored with it. I'm like, okay, this is amazing. Even the older generation of people are embracing this new kind of way of doing it. It's not new. It's new when it comes to store-bought food, and it shouldn't be, right? It's not a new way of feeding. It's a new way of selling. So that's what we did. And then, we went right in the retail track right away. Like I always looked at this as a retail first brand. We do sell directly on our website and things like that. But the idea of a parent just buying something on a website they never heard of as a parent felt odd to me. You live on a shelf though at the grocery store that they shop at and trust with other brand names, and obviously there's a sourcing aspect to that where they have to look at our practices and things like that. Feels safe. Like it feels much safer to pull us off a shelf at, a Fresh Time where you're comfortable shopping and know they have quality standards than to just buy it off our website. So we just went right in on sort of that retail track and we're able to nail some very fast accounts right away, like Central Market in Texas, which is like an unbelievable high-end, Whole Foods type store, but even more like culturally diverse. They saw me pitch before the product was even ready to sell. And she's like, I'm your first buyer. Like, it was amazing because she's like, use me to ask all those questions that you may not feel comfortable asking others. Like, I love what you're doing so much. And as a new mom, like, I will help you through this. So it's kind of amazing. The natural products industry is unbelievably supportive in general and collaborative. So that's the first store we got in. And now we're sold in stores all over the country. We are primarily in the natural and organic channel right now, though. That's who we are. We'd like to make our way into conventional, but we also need to then, we want to be able to get the price point to a more conventional price point before we land in conventional stores. So yeah. And Amazon and Thrive Market has been an amazing partner, for people that don't want to go to the stores. They know Thrive has the absolute highest quality standards possible. It's actually unbelievable how buttoned up they are. So we like partnering like that with trusted places where parents know they can buy a good product.
Yeah. When you were talking about earlier, that first pitch to one of your first retail partners, was that at the time, did that come together pretty easily about here? Because I think you mentioned they knew the product. You were not coming in cold, basically.
No, sorry. I don't think I clarified that well. I was pitching at Expo East. And now it's called something else. And it was just a pitch competition for brands.
Oh, I see.
And the buyer from Central Market saw it and was like, I want that. That's how it happened. I wasn't pitching to Central Market specifically. So that's kind of how it happened. And, something to say about that. I was very hesitant at the beginning before we were sold, before we had a real following. Like, should I be getting up and saying so much about this brand? It's so good. Who's going to take it? But then I realized you can't build a business in that way. You have to be public to some degree in order to get anyone to know you exist. And there have definitely been brands that have stripped language that we use from our website, language. And that's okay. All good. Like a rising tide lifts all ships. Like, I want kids to eat like this. I really do. So you know what, by all means. But this is our bread and butter. This is all we do. We don't have a plastic pouch that came first and now we're scrambling to add some turmeric to it or whatever. Like, that's not who we are. We are real authentic, international meals. And we work with a whole chef advisory board that authenticate the recipes. Like, if I'm going to be serving, pad thai or tikka masala, I want to make sure that a chef that knows that, like, in their bones, like, says this is good, and that's important to us. And we do that.
Yeah, I mean, the authenticity part of it, like, there are going to be, I don't even think it matters. Any successful business in some way, you're going to have people ripping off. They'll look at you from the outside and go, okay, what is it about this brand, this company, this product that it's resonating with people? And you can kind of like reverse engineer the messaging, the branding, the benefits, and create some Frankenstein version of that and slap it on a different product. But I think consumers are smart. And they can sniff out or at least recognize the brands that are, really authentic from top to bottom, the product, the branding, everything. Which is why there's so many, people in the startup world who are kind of afraid to, like you said, make what they're doing public too early or to pitch it to a bunch of people in the industry. But I think the reality is, like, if it's something you've been working on for a while and you're passionate about it and you've got that history of what you're building, it's probably most cases very hard for someone to totally rip it off and just run with it and like pass, lap you as you're on the same race.
Totally agree. And I agree with you on the consumer part. Like, they are smart, right? And I have trust in that. So but it's challenging.
But actually, the same question I had before, when you were like pitching at that event. Did you struggle at all kind of going into it? And I run into this a lot with clients where it's like, okay, we've got all these different benefits and they're all like genuine and authentic and real. And they're like, but you're so close to the business. How do you really know, like, what is the number one thing that we're going to lead with? What's like the secondary stuff? You can probably go back and forth, on the merry-go-round and drive
Yes.
yourself crazy.
Right.
A lot of times your customers, will tell you, and that happens in
Yeah.
different ways. But
Mhm.
but when you're pitching, might not be that easy. Did you struggle
Yeah.
with that?
Yeah, for sure. Absolutely. I mean, we have now really honed in on what we call our brand pillars, or,
Yeah.
the four tenets of what we refer to as the global difference.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, I don't, it's hard to say which one is prioritized, right? Like it actually sometimes depends on where it's being sold as well. And
Mm-hmm.
so we collaborate with so anyway, we boiled it down to the four tenets, right? And they're very clear on our website. They're clear everywhere. But when it comes to the retailers, we work with them to kind of, determine what it is that they think will resonate with their customers. No one knows their consumers better than they know their consumers. So like, for instance, you would, in marketing, you would appreciate, it's like, at retail, it's hard. You're on a shelf in a sea of other things. How do you provide more clarity on your brand? How do you provide education if you're unknown, but you're next to a brand that's well known? Like, how do you do this? So we'll talk to, so we're investing in some things that allow us to have a little more real estate, like shelf ready display cases and stuff that have more educational real estate and stuff. But we'll talk to the retailers and say, we want to do, kind of like those shelf talkers that stick out or whatever. Do you think it's this message, this one, or this one that will resonate the most with yours? And then they'll tell us, some of them will tell us like, oh, definitely this, or some will say, I don't know, maybe both of these, and we'll A/B test it, right? Because almost all of our stores have multiple locations. I mean, we're in chains. Even small ones like Central Market is 10, but that's also owned by HEB, which is amazing. I'm learning so much. It's like there's most of these little guys are actually sometimes owned by bigger guys, but
Sure.
so I think there's a collaborative aspect to working with your retail partners to ensure that you're providing the right messaging for their consumer, because the California consumer is different than, the Texas consumer is different than the New York consumer. So we really do work with each individual store and brand to determine the best way to go about that messaging.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. And I'm by no means an expert in, retail like marketing or CPG marketing, but even with all of those challenges of, marketing or selling a product in retail, the thing that I always get kind of interested in is I'm guessing the stuff that you probably like too is all of the kind of brand building and storytelling and getting in front of parents with the brand. And like a lot of it is education. And when you have a relatively differentiated product that a fair bit of education needs to go with that, of like why somebody might pay a little bit more for your product, or why would they choose you if they have a couple different options. So sort of in parallel with like working with retail partners, what's been the kind of stuff that you've done like outside of that to I roll it all up to a generic sort of just umbrella of content marketing, but that can mean a different thing for every company. So how have you looked at that, and what have been some of the things that you've done or tried?
Yeah, I mean, retail marketing is totally different than anything I've ever done. With the first company is a digital publication, like you're just trying to acquire readers, right? Like, and then it's all been very, very different. So for us, it's kind of I guess I would say, a 360-degree sort of way to target our actual consumers, whether it's on shelf, right, or at the store level, or it's driving them to the store to buy it, or it's driving them to our website to buy it. So, I can't say I've nailed the marketing thing at all, right? I don't know if anyone says they actually have, like, please send them my way, because there's too many ways to reach people today. But, we've worked along, like, we have a very minimal budget, almost non-existent when it comes to marketing. So we have to kind of remove from the equation the ability to spend a lot of money on customer acquisition. That's phase, honestly, like that's when you start to raise more money, because then you have more to play with and you can hone in on what's actually working. So we've leaned into obviously our website and doing a lot of great content, really being this sort of community for parents as it comes, as it pertains to their feeding journey. We really do see ourselves as being this almost like your friend along the way when it comes to all things feeding. It's recipes that you can do with your kids, or techniques to get them into the kitchen with you, and things like that. So obviously, like, content's been big, and then sharing it out across all the platforms. We've dabbled with people that have helped support us with like some social media ads, but they weren't being as impactful as we needed. But I think it might have been a budget thing. So I just said, I don't want to test like basically meta and social marketing with such a small budget, because I don't think we're hitting the threshold to make it even at all worthwhile or to give us the data that we need. So let's pause on that. So it's all been organic with that. Looking at digital ways that people in this particular industry, CPG food, how they have been doing things. So like Instacart is actually a really big way that people advertise today. And it's whole convoluted back end thing that like, don't ask me how to do it. But really leaning into more of the industry centric sort of marketing options. And then honestly waiting until probably, our next big round of funding comes through to really start to blow it up. But we've been spending a lot of time over the last year and a half focused on the retail marketing, on-site, organic channels online as much as we can, and some paid tests here and there. Also, like, really starting to look at where are the millennial and Gen Z moms, learning about the feeding journey, surprisingly, like, and I actually, this is like kind of, I guess, a piece of advice, like, because I said earlier, maybe I'm contradicting myself, like I've built businesses for the woman that I am at that point, but the fact is not everyone thinks just like me. And so like, I didn't know, I haven't been on Pinterest in years and years and years, but you know how many moms are on Pinterest? And that is like how they are decorating their homes and cooking their food and all this stuff. And so we got on Pinterest, maybe a few months ago, because the statistics and the data showed us that's an important place to be. Oh, and that's actually one other thing I would say that's very important in this business versus anything else I've ever done. How important data is to our story. Getting to really starting to understand the trends in the industry, seeing what's working on shelves and what's not, seeing what's growing in the natural channel, but maybe like going down in the conventional channel. What is our data? Like, what is my category doing, and what's working, what's not working. So, you can use data like, let's say the overall category of baby food has declined, but the natural organic brands have increased. So it's like, those are ways to tell a good story. And that helps us with getting onto more shelves. Like that helps tell our story to retailers. And it helps us gain funding, which will help us to share this with more people. So I had never really used data in the way that I'm using it today. And I think that that's just been huge. To make data-driven decisions is like a blessing. Yeah.
I mean, doing all of the marketing to, or working with retail partners and all of the and I'm sure mountains of data that you could pull, but like, how do you pick out the ones where there might be some, helpful insights that could drive some kind of action? That's probably the biggest challenge. I could see how that working in parallel with doing, content marketing and videos and educational things, because they kind of feed into each other, and you learn one thing and it helps on the other side of the marketing, ecosystem, I guess. Totally. And I think that's a good place to be, by the way, where you're not, it's not like you have this, like you said, a non-existent budget, even if it's just time. And then, you shake out the couch cushions to see what you could spend on here and there.
So sad.
It's not, but it's not a bad place to be, because I think there are companies that I know that I've worked with, and just companies that I know that live in that sort of marketing grind like mindset, and you have to be scrappy. You have to, if you don't know your customer,
absolutely,
you're screwed, because it'd be very easy for someone to come and write a big check and go, all right, we're going to spend, $50,000 a month on Facebook ads. And then, okay, whoever's managing those ads, they're going to make you feel pretty good about how you're doing. And then you kind of like sit back, and you might lose sight of the customer, what they care about, the retail stuff is happening. But so anyways, I think that's a good place to be, because once you kind of work through all that, and then you're like really at a point where, and I have worked with clients like this, where they kind of figure out where they get the little fire started of like, okay, we're figuring out some stuff about what works, what doesn't work. And then later on, when you can pour some gasoline on it, then you're much more set up to be not wasting time and money later on, really.
That you just said that so well. It's true. It's like, I like how you said you're throwing gasoline on it later. Do the learnings now, like scrappily do what you can do to discover what it is that your consumer or customer wants.
Yeah.
Right. And then you're not wasting money down the line because you can really hone in on that. I think that's a great way of phrasing it, is throw the gasoline on a bit later. And that's what we've been doing is taking our learnings, like seeing, there's been stores that were like, we were in there, but that's not the best fit for us, right? That's not our consumer at all. Like the average age of that consumer is 57 years old versus, and there's 57-year-old parents. I'm saying nothing at all offensive about that. I'm just saying that's not our primary target, and so, you're learning along the way. And so it's great. I don't need to be in that store. I don't need to put resources towards that. Let's refocus and go bigger and put more resources at this store where they have a huge baby food aisle with, younger families shopping there. So it's all this is the first time I've taken a step back, I think, in business in general, and just really looked at the consumer and the data before I make any decision. It's not just, I listen to my gut when it comes to a lot of things, who I want to work with, like, is this a good person, things like that. But I don't just go by my gut when it comes to what recipe is coming out next, right? Or what, like that's just not smart. And so being able to learn the customer as quickly as you can and in as much detail as you can as early as possible is a great thing.
Yeah, and there's nothing wrong with a good old fashioned spaghetti test where you throw it at the wall and see what sticks. But if you can go into that with a bunch of data of like, okay, we're going to be like very deliberate about exactly, what we're throwing at the wall first. Usually that's, I think, to your point, that's the customer insight, the data point to help you do that. Can you remember like a really specific learning or a conversation with a customer or a piece of data where you actually took that and go, okay, rather than going with your gut, going, okay, there's something here. This is an insight. Well, how do we take that and, I don't know, do some piece of marketing or do, something where we're adjusting the pitch to retailers? Can you think of like a specific, like little gold nugget of an insight that you took and used somehow?
Ooh, on the spot, it's hard to like be super specific. I would say though that like, even though we did some initial surveys, many around the flavors, right? Great. I'm getting intel from real parents and this is how they will purchase, but now we have actual data on what they are purchasing. So, so we may think that our Yaya's Medi Bowl is going to be our top seller, but the numbers tell us something otherwise, right? So it doesn't mean we discontinue that flavor. And by the way, I'm making that up in terms of the Yaya's, but it's like, we don't need to discontinue it right away. But if it's consistently dropping, like, let's put our eggs in a different basket. Let's go out and see, what do our customers want to replace that with? So, stuff like that. I'm trying to think of like a time where my gut was just like totally wrong. I mean, we talk to parents all the time. One thing we learned, I don't know if this really answers the question as well as I'd like, if I had more time to think about it, but like our packaging was leading to a lot of breakage at the beginning, even though we had done so much engineering, so much work on these like custom boxes that flipped in and had little compartments. And it's like, okay, well, let's say, whatever percentage of the boxes are getting broken. Well, we need to listen to this, and on Amazon, we were getting bad reviews strictly because of the breakage. So like the only reason for the most part, the only reason we were getting negative reviews had to do with that breakage. So it's like, well, I'm not going to allow my Amazon star to be crap because of something that's somewhat out of our control, right? It's the UPS, it's the mail, it's blah, blah, blah. So we've put a lot of resources and this is how we prioritize how we spend, given that we're a very budget conscious company, that our new spend, like our big spend today, needs to go towards fixing this problem. So we actually allocated a lot of resources towards getting new packaging and having an engineer really come up with a way to keep those jars safe and stable. And it's worked like flawlessly. So we're really happy with it. But that's not so much not following my gut, but it's more like learnings as you go and having to quickly fix them. Like you can't let your company suffer in that way, or see star ratings go down or whatever because of something that can be fixed. So take away the ego a little bit, take away like, oh, but I really need to do that social thing or this. No, fix the damn problem first. And all that other stuff will have more of an effect. I wish I had more time to think about like really specific things.
Yeah.
But those were like two things I thought of.
Yeah. And that kind of answered the next question, because I see this a lot with like a big part. Probably my clients get a little bit annoyed with me because it's like so much of it is just, we got to talk to the customers. We got to dig in. Like there's great quantitative data that you can get from your website or from, sales or whatever. And then there's the qualitative, like, okay, someone might give a nice review or a testimonial, but there's so much like under the surface that like is just great insights that you can mine if you have a process to do that. And I feel like what you were getting at is maybe not directly this, but seeing data, of any kind, but then digging in a little bit to just kind of understand the customer's like actual experience,
absolutely,
what they think about, because they might say one thing and their actions might show one thing, but understanding, really at the core of like their sort of relationship with the brand, because a lot of brand is just how you view a company, how you feel about them, which is another thing that is kind of tough to wrap your head around. And like when you're starting a business, that brand is everything. It's sort of frustrating for me because I wish I had a great like specific definition of it. But that's a good example of just kind of understanding, just going deeper in the customer's experience. And like you said, if there's something small you can fix, and you're lucky enough to have found what that thing is, like just kind of address it quickly and then move on to the next thing. And it feels like you're on a hamster wheel, but fast forward a couple months or years and that's a compounding thing.
Well, and we're also small enough now too, we're not Nestle or, whatever. We literally asked to have meetings or, quick calls with our best customers, people that were repeatedly ordering over and over again on our website, because that's also a really, important relationship, is the ones that you have with your customers that buy on your site, right? Those are your owned audience. Like they're the most loyal, right? Generally, if they're willing to spend shipping and, all this stuff, and having real chats with them and just getting raw. And what we want to know exactly, why are you ordering this? And what don't you like? Or what would you want to see? And actually those conversations have sparked a lot in terms of innovation for us and where we're going in the future, and kind of like the next step of what we want to be able to sell to parents and what they need. But just really, really talking to your customers. It's like, there's a blessing to being our size, that, there's small blessings and large blessings about being this size that allow us to become a much bigger size that you don't always take the time to do when you get there. And I think that's the beauty of being a small brand and being able to engage with our customers. I mean, I am so proud of our customer service. It's not even funny. I mean, the timeliness in which we respond and what we do to go overboard if, they had an issue, like to the point where I've had Amazon reviewers go and change their review because they were so stunned by how over and above we went, to make them feel heard, and realized, that the shipping is not totally within our control. We re-engineered them. We took the part that we could control and did that. And some of it is still not always going to be, like it's the mail. But, they not only then commented, it's like, I shouldn't have put a 1-star review up because of a shipping issue, but I did, and I got this in return, and I have to say I got the best customer service, blah, 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 So it's really just going above and beyond for customers and truly just getting to know them and knowing what they want and need. And that's really life. That's not just business. Like it's not just customers, it's your friends, like it's your family. What do they need and want from you? You want to give them that, right? If you love someone. So Yeah.
And I'm afraid this question might be slightly rephrasing one I asked earlier, but what you were just talking about made me think of this. And I'm guessing when you talked about like early on, when you said within a week of like, you had the idea and you were like off and running and like decisive, like move quickly. So I get a sense that maybe that'll be your answer to this. Have you had a moment at all during like the journey of like founding the company, whether it's like marketing or really just anything, where it's just like, okay, we have to pivot. Here's the pivot. Here's what we're going to do. And we're just going to go. Like when you moved quickly in the beginning, did you have moments along the way where that happened?
Yeah. I mean, I can point to something like last week, and the first week aside, like I really did try to do things properly in that way of like really doing the customer work and the discovery stuff. But like a big pivot, right, is in this business particularly, and I can't speak for every type of business, but CPG or products in general, you rely on a supply chain and a manufacturing, situation.
Yeah.
So most CPG companies like mine, we don't have the means to like have our own manufacturing plants, right? Or the wherewithal to know how to work them and make sure they're safe and hygienic. And, there's all sorts of things. So you work with a manufacturer. Well, our manufacturer abruptly shut down last week or 2 weeks ago. Literally no notice. Like the employees didn't have notice. We didn't have notice. I just saw that my orders weren't going out. Now I have like 9 purchase orders. That's a lot, because anyway, so I find out our stuff is just in the warehouse, just sitting there, and we don't have access because the bank has taken over the facility. I mean, this is crazy stuff, right? So so without thinking about it, you just go into survival mode. And Joanna and I just were like, okay, well, this is not fun, but we got to fix it. And so, the first time around, finding a manufacturer took forever. No one wants to work with a woman with an idea, like a woman with somewhat of a plan. It's like, no, you want to work with someone who's proven, who's going to be a long-term client, who's going to make you money, right? And so anyway, so it was hard enough to get it the first time. Well, now at least we have a business, we have numbers, we have a brand that some people can recognize at this point. We're still very small, but we've had a lot of good things happen. So the process that had taken probably a year before was crammed into the last 2 weeks, which is insane, right? Yeah. So we not only had to pivot to figure out, our co-man was also our 3PL. So they were the logistics partner that fulfilled everything and got it shipped out. Well, I called one of my mentors and he's like, I didn't tell you to do that. You should not have the 3PL also be your manufacturer because this exact thing can happen. As soon as you pay for it, get it out the door, right? So anyway, so we're learning along the way. So now we know, okay, we're not going to have a manufacturing 3PL coexist together because we want our stuff out. So anyway, so we spent the last 2 weeks. It was quite the saga. I wrote this Substack that got a lot of engagement. I'll just say that, about it. But I wanted to speak truth about this kind of thing and how this happens to the little guys, and like, how do we, are us little guys with less budget than everyone else generally are the ones dealing with these very expensive hiccups, and how is that allowed to happen? How is that contractually allowed to happen? Blah, blah, blah. But that was a huge pivot and a huge change in our supply chain. So I know that that's more of a logistical kind of operational hiccup or pivot, but it's a pivot nonetheless. And it's something that, if I were to offer any words of advice is to, and I knew this, by the way, this is the thing that kills me. I knew it. You need to have a backup option, or you need to have diversification of your operations and your fulfillment and your manufacturing. So, we were lucky because we at least have a brand now that people, some reason why want to work with us. So it was easier and faster, but it's almost 3 weeks of lost revenue because you couldn't fulfill. So, just always having that backup, and making sure your operations are like set up for a hiccup like this. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think I actually saw it was probably like a LinkedIn post from you or something where you were talking, you were probably right in the middle of it, going through all of this. And I made a note to ask you about it. But I want to ask you like a slightly different question now is, have you noticed any trends with marketing, like yourself as an entrepreneur and a founder of a business, where it's like the marketing of you and your story and your experience, and like great example is like you run into this pretty catastrophic like issue and it takes a couple of weeks to clear it up, and you're kind of putting all of that like on display to probably just to like educate people or help other people who might be also, starting a similar kind of business. Have you like had any stories of doing that marketing that's really not that traditional? Like if you go back 10 years, like nobody was doing that. They would start a company and you wouldn't really know
True.
who's behind, these new brands.
Yeah.
Have you been trying to do a lot of that, or is just kind of doing when it comes naturally? Any sort of stories come out of doing that sort of style of marketing, I guess is the question.
Yeah, it's not in my nature to want to be that upfront.
Yeah.
But it just inherently has always been that way. Just don't like it. But what I realized now, like, so I'm going to use this example, but I went through the Target Accelerator program where we just learned so much and how to prepare yourselves for big box stuff and whatever. But 92% of their shoppers will buy from a brand because it's a woman-owned brand. Okay. Replace that woman-owned with something else, right? But people are now shopping with their values. They're shopping with morals or whatever it is. And they're putting their money behind brands that they want to support. And so it is important that they know the human behind it, right? Like, whether it's this or another brand, it's people buy because they like the humanity or they agree with that person, or they're like, oh, she's a mom just like me, or whatever, fill in the blank. And so I recognize the importance of doing that. And I do think, and maybe it's more so now in the last, 5-10 years, where it's like founder-led marketing is a thing. So yeah, it's something I have to do. And like being sort of public about building this, it just inherently was sort of happening. And then I did that Gordon Ramsay show, and that was like obviously a lot of exposure for me and the brand. And so like, I wasn't going to let an opportunity like being on a primetime Fox television show, pass us by. So like, I'm forced to take a step back and say, I don't like this part of it. I really, really don't.
Yeah.
But I have to lean into it. Right. Yeah. And it's okay. Like, if someone doesn't like me, I don't really okay, like, fine. That's the risk you take. Like, and that's the risk you take writing a Substack and relating it, to a bigger, I think a much larger problem in the United States and the world. Yeah. And I know you don't mix certain things together, but like in reality, like, I think people relate to me because of some of those truths that I speak. And because I'm building this publicly, and because I'm sharing not only like the wins, but the losses. Because this business, any entrepreneurial journey is full of wins and losses, but believe me, it's more losses than wins. And so I've made that choice to sort of kind of put that out there. Also, writing like via Substack or whatever is cathartic to me. I'm a writer at heart. I mean, I've been a writer. My first company was a magazine. I've been a food writer. Like, writing is my thing. And so in some ways, it's also selfishly cathartic for me to kind of get this out there. But then I look at it, I'm like, but this is telling the story of our journey. Like, this, if this can be helpful to somebody else, like, no one ever told me a story about losing their co-man like that. I know it happens, right? And I've heard other horror stories, but not that particular one. So, let me put that out there, So yeah, I hope that answered that question.
Yeah, yeah, it does. I mean, the whole idea of that, like, founder-led marketing is, and I'm not speaking, about you and your situation, because I don't probably know you well enough, but at least for me and a lot of like clients I work with, there's this, no matter how like incredibly successful you are, like from the outside, there's still that little bit of imposter syndrome that you have inside of you, that if you're running a business, you can always look at some other business that's farther ahead of you. They seem more polished. So I don't think as human beings, you can turn off that like comparison that you're always making. So many people are just afraid to make themselves, visible and public and share the highs and the lows. And people, I mean, even like clients will say, I don't like being on video. And like, I hate it. I don't like it either. But I've seen it happen enough times where you, kind of put yourself out there in that way, and they're like, oh, well, it's not going to look polished. I was like, even better.
That's the best. Why should you be polished in that regard? I mean, there are things that should, come across, but the rawness and the realness of doing something like this and being able to share it, and in the hopes that it helps somebody else, or, whatever it might be, like, that doesn't need to be polished. That's not polished. That's life. And that's my life, and that's business, And so I think some of that rawness is what people like, and some people don't, right? But the people that do are the ones that are going to be your best customers, And I mean, I like to think, oh, sorry, go ahead.
Oh, no, go ahead. Complete your thought.
I was just gonna say, I think I like to think that we have a brand that's universally appealing, but I'm not universally appealing to everybody, right? So it's like you have to kind of balance that too.
Yeah. And I was going to say something kind of similar, that if you put out some, again, going back to like being really polished, and if it's a piece of content and it's, say it's a video and it's like great lighting and great high quality video and animations and editing and something that looks like very, something that you would see again 10, 15 years ago, and something that's scripted. Like if you're reading something that's scripted now, it's like that just feels to the audience like, okay, this is calculated and you wrote something to try to appeal to everyone. And so a lot of people are going to turn that off. And then, but to your point, if you go out there and just raw it, it's like, take it or leave it, just like life. If you might like it or not, or if you don't like the message or like the message, you could think of 100 examples of that. That again, it's just another way of what we said earlier about authenticity. It all comes back to that.
Totally.
Last question I wanted to ask you. I didn't want to forget about this, and you reminded me. The Gordon Ramsay thing. How did that come to be? What's kind of like the quick story of how that whole thing came together?
That was not on my bingo card to like quote what everyone's saying these days, but like my son is obsessed with Gordon Ramsay, like because we watch all of his shows. It's a direct like reflection of like us showing him Gordon Ramsay shows. Like it's so funny, we're so particular with what he watches, and yet we're like, you effing donkey, like we let him watch that kind of stuff. And it's like, anyway, so we watched season 1 of Food Stars, which was basically The Apprentice for food founders. It's a business challenge, 10 episodes, 10 weeks of like business related challenges for people that own a food company of some sort. And so my son, at the time, he was like super young. I'm trying to remember. But he said to me, "Oh, mommy, you can be on this. You can win this." And I'm like, "Okay." And he's like, "Are you going to apply?" And I'm like, sure, honey. Months later, he's like, "Did you apply?" I'm like, "No, I'm so sorry. I forgot." And he's like, "We're doing it right now." Kid you not. He was with me every step of the way. It was like, it wasn't a very lengthy process, to be honest. And I got a call like that day or the next morning from a producer. Wow. It was crazy. And then I'm on a plane within, I don't remember, 6-7 weeks, like from that point. It was absolute chaos. They'd already finished casting. They'd said that that part of it had closed, but I guess if someone applies that they want to talk to, they will. So I was, I had to pack for either 5 days or 2 months, 8 weeks. And leave my family. It was crazy, really. Because I didn't know if I was going to make it on the show, because this season season 2 is different than season 1, in the sense that it wasn't just Gordon Ramsay. He had a partner in this, Lisa Vanderpump, and they were playing teams, right? So you had to apply like audition, like American Idol style, except instead of singing a song, I pitched my company in front of like 2 icons that were, it was the most, I can't even believe I did it. Like you had to walk like, felt like the length of a football field to get up to that.
So they were picking people from the show to be on their team.
Correct.
So it's like almost like The Voice, right? Where they're like the celebrities competing.
Exactly. Yes, exactly. So so that's what I did. And then I got chosen for Lisa Vanderpump's team, and I was like, this is not real life. Like I don't understand what's happening right now. Like I'm in London by myself without my family. I just hired Joanna. Now Joanna's basically taking the reins for a company she'd only worked for like 3 months. You know, like it was pretty crazy, but it was an incredible experience. And you know what? I actually they are super supportive. Like Gordon knew about my son and ended up sending him a video because my son couldn't get over there to meet him. And that was like, seriously, I'm not making light of how important it was to like win for other reasons, but like I really wanted to get to the end so my son could meet Gordon Ramsay, because I had a feeling that might happen, and they didn't fly kids and whatever. So he did. He sent that video, and honestly, I want to send them both a note, because this co-man thing that happened, the pivot that I just told you about, and I think one of the reasons I was able to find options so quickly is because like quite a few of the co-mans that we were introduced to had seen the show. Yeah. So like I owe them a huge load of gratitude, because in whatever way that exposure helped me now, like basically save the business in a matter of a couple weeks versus months and months and months, which could sink a company. So, it's not that it didn't directly like spike my sales to millions and millions and millions of dollars, but it's things like this that really, that it was show the real impact of an opportunity like that. So it was like, didn't feel like a real thing though. It was crazy.
I can imagine. I mean, I'm a big Gordon Ramsay fan. I'm not sure many people are not.
He's the best.
Whether or not you you like him or even slightly annoyed by the persona.
He's the nicest. He's not that person. Like I'm sure funny, he is. He's nice. He's caring. Like, and he's enormous. But it was. It's hard not to like him. Honestly, that is true.
And the takeaway from that too. I mean, you hit the nail on the head. I think some people might ask the question like, oh, so how did that impact the business? What did sales look like? And it's like, you don't have something to point to that very second, but fast forward however long it was and the value of getting those connections or whatever that was, like if you worked at it, you probably could assign a dollar value to that. There's a million examples of that, like that with marketing that I try to explain to clients, because I'll sort of, propose a, mini campaign of some kind or, creating a new type of content. And with brand, like, there's never a direct sort of like, oh, you're going to invest this much time or this much money into some brand building thing. No one is going to be able to tie that to an exact dollar amount of revenue. And if they are saying that, they're lying.
100%. It's the intangible ROI that you can't, that to me has been the biggest part of that experience. So and it is hard, PR marketing is like, how do you put a dollar amount? You can, if you want, you can, if you really like look at it like that, but it's these long standing sort of like trickle down things that could happen a year later, that you just don't even recognize. So it was a great experience.
And it was for me on a smaller scale. And I try to come up with as many examples of this as possible. It's like I was posting on LinkedIn a bunch years ago when it was sort of kind of blowing up as a actual more social platform versus just what it was in the beginning. And people were like looking at me like I was a little crazy, like nobody was engaging with my post, but I was doing it every day.
But I'm going to do it. I'm going to keep it going.
I looked like the crazy guy in the park, like talking to himself. But fast forward, it was like a year later maybe of doing that. And there were like people like, hey, I saw a couple of your posts you posted like a very long time ago, and those turned into clients, and that, or great relationships. And so much of marketing is that it's the frustrating thing, but also the really exciting, fun thing when you like start to like reap the benefits of that. And I'm sure you noticed that a little bit too with, not just the Gordon Ramsay thing, but a lot of the stuff that you are working on.
Relationship building to me is like one of the most important things. That it's not about, you just never know. Like the whole community that has kind of rallied around us lately is like not always people I've met. It's people that may have found me on LinkedIn or that were somehow, connected through the industry. But there's so much ROI on it that it's just hard to pinpoint. But also like I am a very firm believer that you get what you put out into the world. And so like, don't just go on LinkedIn when you need help, like support other people when they need help, or, follow other people and learn from them. So it's very reciprocal, or it should be.
Well, we've covered a lot. I don't know if the answer, and I know it's a Monday morning and I don't want to eat up too much more of your time, but I wanted to ask you, advice that you would give to others, starting a business or anyone kind of in your world, exploring different paths of entrepreneurship, and maybe specifically folks who are, working with, families or parents or that kind of thing, because with this podcast, but then also with like just my consulting practice, I've sort of like, without intentionally doing it, started to gravitate towards like brands and founders who are
Parents.
Yeah, like
Yeah,
helping parents and families thrive, and that's a big umbrella.
totally.
Lots of different. Doesn't have to be CPG. It could be tech.
Right.
There's a lot of that, but just building solutions for families. That's probably the best way to say it.
Yeah, right.
What kind of advice would you give to somebody trying to do that?
Yeah, no, thank you. That's a great question. I would say I have two. One on the business side of things is just make sure whatever you do, you go in eyes wide open, right? Don't cut corners when it comes to the R&D. Don't cut corners when it comes to like, talking to people or surveying or, learning if this is a real need. And also understand like the pitfalls and of your industry in general. Like, can you afford to do this, right? Like, do you have enough backing? Do you have, the community to help support this, right? So just go in eyes wide open. Please don't leave any stones unturned, because it's not a fun place to be when you get a big surprise and you don't know how to handle it, right? And then from like a parenting perspective, this is the first company I've built since having children, right? Like I went on maternity leave when I was at Reserve and didn't go back. And that's when I started kind of consulting for other startups. So I didn't want my kids to ever feel like it was the business versus them, that they had to compete for my time, love, and attention. And so what I've done, and this was never advised to me, and I don't even think I thought about it, it just was kind of a natural way that I interacted with my family, was making them a part of the business so that it was never a them versus the business. Yeah. And so, we talk about it at the dinner table. I bring, Charlie came to my demo day for Techstars. Like both my kids have come to multiple pitches, and they've come to other entrepreneurial things, not just involving me. Because I want them to feel like they're very much a part of it and that it's their business too. And it has worked really well for our family because, even at the dinner table, like my son is like, so how many jars of Globowl did we sell today? How many stores did we get into today? It's we. Yeah. And I think that has made it exciting for them to almost like be on this ride and like build it together. Cause my daughter was 6 months old when I started this, or 7 months old. And my son was 3.5 or something like that. So, it's been their whole life. And I just never want them to feel like my business is taking my attention away from them. And so being able to kind of incorporate it and make it a family thing has been really beneficial to my family.
Yeah. Yeah. That's great advice. And as you were talking, I was even thinking of my own kids, and right now they're both pretty young. So all they know is that daddy works in the basement. That's all they know. I swear it's like, it's a nice office, but it is in the basement, and there's some natural light. But when people ask them, they're like, oh, my dad works in the basement. But that's great. That's great that you're getting them, engaged and feeling like they're part of it, because I didn't talk about this at the beginning. It's a question I ask a lot of people from the very get-go, is like, growing up, were you exposed to other people who were entrepreneurs or starting a business or going like off the beaten path, like professionally and like kind of doing your own thing? It doesn't have to be starting a company, right. Because if you see people do that, and there's not a playbook, but like you can see that it's possible. Mm-hmm. I think that's just great for anybody to have, so that, you're starting a career, and if the traditional career path is, what you want to do, like there's nothing wrong with that, but at least knowing other stuff is possible and seeing other people do it is huge. And so kind of sharing that with your kids, I'm sure is, and they're still pretty young, but already pretty rewarding, I'm sure.
Oh, yes, absolutely. And my father, I never looked at him as an entrepreneur. He's a physician, but he started, a practice that, became a bigger practice and, different specialties and stuff. And now that I've been doing this for so long, I've realized, wow, he risked everything too. Like he left his home, where he was from, moved to Florida to start something there because he thought that's where, the people are that need him and blah, blah, blah. And and my mom ran the business on the back end, and I never looked at her like an entrepreneur because she was always home for me, but now I look back and I'm like, oh my God, not only were they entrepreneurial and they built this from nothing, they were always there for me, and that's what I want my kids to have as well, is the knowledge that their parents are always there for them, and, that they're part of anything that we do, whether it's business or anything else. So, yeah.
Yep. Well, I really appreciate Erica tonight when at the dinner table, you can tell your kids, hey, we did a podcast today.
We did it.
Yeah.
Totally. They love that stuff.
Yeah.
They love that stuff.
Yeah.
I think it's really cool and fun. So
they can be your little producers.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh my God, one day, right?
Yeah. All right. Well, I really appreciate it. I know we went a little bit long, but great conversation,
really
great advice.
Thank you.
And I'm, also being in Chicago, and I would love to stay in touch. And
absolutely,
we'll keep an eye on, staying connected on like LinkedIn and everywhere else you guys are at. And
thank you.
Continued success, and really appreciate you sitting down.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. This is a joy for me. So.
All right. Well, thanks again, and we'll talk to you soon.
Okay.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye.